The wine spread across his pristine white shirt like blood. Emma Sullivan stood frozen, tray trembling in her hands, watching her tip and possibly her job evaporate in real time. The private dining room at Morton's Diner fell silent, for men in expensive suits staring at the catastrophe she had just created. Jackson Reed looked down at the crimson stain, then up at her. Those gray eyes held no anger, just a calculating intensity that made her stomach twist. "I am so sorry," Emma stammered, grabbing napkins. "I'll pay for the cleaning. Whatever it costs." Her feet screamed inside worn sneakers. 28 years old, and she felt twice that, pulled double shifts 6 days a week just to keep breathing. Her father's medical bills had stolen her master's program, her dreams, her future. All that remained was this: exhaustion, desperation, and now humiliation. Jackson stood slowly, unbuttoning his suit jacket. Accidents happen. But something in his tone suggested this was anything but accidental to him. "Sir, really, let me get you something to clean up with," Emma insisted, professional composure cracking. "Perhaps you could show me where I might find a restroom." She led him through the diner, hyper-aware of his presence behind her. She pointed to the door, turned to retreat. "You're exhausted." Emma looked up, surprised. Up close, he wasn't quite as coldly perfect as he appeared from a distance. Fine lines creased the corners of his eyes. Something haunted lingered there. "It's been a long day," she said carefully. "I have a proposition for you." Emma's eyes narrowed. "I'm not that kind of waitress." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Not that kind of proposition. I need someone to accompany me to a business retreat this weekend. 2 days. The pay would be $10,000. Emma's mind went blank. $10,000. Months of rent. A massive dent in her student loans. Breathing room she hadn't had in years. It also sounded completely insane. "Why me?" she asked bluntly. "You could hire anyone." "Because everyone in my world has an angle," Jackson replied, voice dropping lower. "You spilled wine on me and looked genuinely devastated. That kind of authentic reaction is rare. Plus, you clearly can't stand me, which means you won't spend the weekend trying to impress me." He wasn't wrong. She didn't like him, didn't like what he represented. The ease of his wealth while she worked herself to exhaustion. But $10,000 would change her life. What exactly would this weekend entail? "A business retreat at my mountain property. Other executives present. You would pose as my companion. Nothing physical or inappropriate. Separate rooms. Professional boundaries. Think of it as very well paid acting." Emma studied his face, looking for the trap. But beneath the cold exterior, she glimpsed something unexpected. Loneliness. The kind of bone-deep isolation she recognized because she felt it herself every single day. "I have conditions," she heard herself say. "Half the money up front. Separate accommodations. And I leave the moment anything feels wrong. No questions asked." "Agreed." Jackson pulled out his phone. "Give me your banking information. The deposit will clear within the hour." Emma's hands shook as she typed her account details. This was insane. She was agreeing to spend a weekend with a billionaire stranger in an isolated mountain location. But the desperate part that woke up every morning dreading another day of barely surviving drowned out the caution. "We leave tomorrow at noon," Jackson said. "Pack for cold weather and formal dinners. I'll send a car." He returned to his table before Emma could respond. That night, lying in her cramped studio apartment, Emma checked her banking app for the 20th time. $5,000 sat there, real and tangible. She stared at the ceiling, wondering what she had just agreed to, and tried to ignore the flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with those intense gray eyes. The black town car arrived precisely at noon. Emma slid into the leather interior, feeling completely out of place among such luxury. They drove to a private airfield where a sleek helicopter waited. Jackson stood beside the aircraft, impossibly tall in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. "Ready?" he asked. "Do I have a choice?" Emma replied, then mentally kicked herself. This man was paying her $10,000. She could manage polite. Jackson's mouth quirked slightly. "You always have a choice. That's important to remember this weekend." The helicopter lifted, the city falling away beneath them. Emma gripped her seat as rolling forests gave way to snow-capped mountains. Jackson sat across from her, occasionally taking calls, mostly watching the landscape with that same distant expression. 2 hours later, they descended toward a mountain valley that stole Emma's breath. The lodge sprawled across a mountainside, all glass and timber, with views that seemed to stretch forever. "This is your cabin?" Emma asked, unable to hide her awe. "One of them," Jackson replied without arrogance. "I bought it for the isolation more than anything else." Inside, everything spoke of understated wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Massive stone fireplace. A kind of luxury Emma had only seen in magazines. "Your suite is upstairs, second door on the right," Jackson said. "The other guests won't arrive until tomorrow morning. Dinner at 7 if you're interested." Emma's room was larger than her entire apartment. King-sized bed, private bathroom with a soaking tub, balcony overlooking the mountains. She sank onto the bed, running her hands over the impossibly soft duvet, trying to process how her life had changed in 24 hours. Snow had begun to fall outside. Light flurries dancing in the fading light. At 7, she made her way downstairs. The main floor glowed with firelight. She found Jackson in the kitchen, surprisingly cooking something that smelled amazing. "I gave the staff the evening off," he said without looking up. "I hope you like pasta." Emma watched this billionaire cook with practiced efficiency, completely at odds with her assumptions. "You cook?" "I find it relaxing. Control over something simple and tangible." He glanced at her, gray eyes catching the firelight. "Plus, I got tired of eating alone at restaurants where everyone wanted something from me. At least at home, the food doesn't have ulterior motives." Something so raw and honest in that statement made Emma's defensive walls crack slightly. "That sounds incredibly lonely," she said quietly. Jackson's hand stilled for just a moment. "It is. But loneliness is better than betrayal." They ate at the large dining table, the meal better than anything Emma had experienced in years. Jackson proved surprisingly easy to talk to when he dropped the cold executive persona. They discussed books, music, the mountain landscape, carefully avoiding anything too personal. After dinner, Jackson poured 2 glasses of wine. They moved to the fireplace, settling into opposite ends of the massive sofa. "Tell me something true," Jackson said suddenly. "Something you don't tell people." Emma looked at him, surprised. "Why?" "Because we're strangers. Sometimes it's easier to be honest with strangers. You'll leave in 2 days and never see me again. No consequences." Emma stared into the fire, feeling the wine warm her blood. "I dropped out of my master's program to pay my father's medical bills. He died anyway, 6 months later. Sometimes I resent him for it, and then I hate myself for resenting him." The confession hung in the air. She had never said that out loud to anyone. Jackson was quiet for a long moment. "My fiancée left me 3 days before our wedding. She sent a text from the airport. Said she couldn't marry someone who loved his work more than her. She wasn't wrong." Emma looked at him, seeing the pain beneath the carefully constructed walls. "When was this?" 2 years ago. I bought this place a month later. Haven't been in a serious relationship since." "Is that why you needed someone for this weekend?" To prove you've moved on. To prove I'm not the cold, emotionally unavailable bastard everyone thinks I am, Jackson said, something bitter in his voice. My business partners think I need to seem more human. More relatable. Having a companion at social events supposedly helps with that image. So I'm a prop, Emma said flatly. No. Jackson turned to face her fully. You're a person I'm paying to help me navigate a social situation I find unbearable. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Because if you were just a prop, I wouldn't care about your comfort or your boundaries. And I do. The intensity in his gaze made Emma's breath catch. This close, she could see flecks of blue in those gray eyes. Could smell his cologne, something woodsy and expensive. The moment stretched, electric with possibility. Then Jackson's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening instantly. The guests are arriving early, he said, standing abruptly. Tomorrow morning instead of afternoon. Which means we need to establish our story tonight. The warmth between them evaporated, replaced by cold professionalism. What story? Emma asked. How we met. How long we've been together. The details that make this convincing. Jackson paced to the windows, staring out at the falling snow. They'll ask questions. Probe for weaknesses. These people are sharks. What do you want me to say? Jackson turned back to her, and Emma saw something in his expression that made her pulse quicken. Not calculation. Not coldness. Fear.
It wasn't gentle. Wasn't testing or tentative. It was fire and desperation, in 2 years of loneliness burning away in an instant. Emma's hands fisted in his sweater, pulling him closer. Drowning in the heat of him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jackson rested his forehead against hers. I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't have done that. Don't apologize. Emma's fingers traced the line of his jaw. Just tell me this isn't about her. Tell me this isn't revenge or proving something. Jackson's eyes opened, and Emma saw absolute clarity there. This is about you. About how you make me feel like I can breathe again. The moment shattered as voices echoed from upstairs. Victoria and Marcus, settling into their room, their laughter cruel and intimate. She brought him here on purpose, Emma said, understanding clicking into place. To hurt you? To prove I'm still broken?
Ow.
Jackson stepped back, running his hands through his hair. To show everyone that I can't maintain relationships. Can't be human. Why would she do that? Because I own 40% of the tech sector she's trying to break into. If I'm seen as unstable, emotionally compromised, my business partners will question my decisions. They'll push me out. Jackson's laugh was hollow. It's brilliant, really. She's weaponizing my loneliness. Emma felt anger rising, hot and protective. Then we make her believe this is real. We sell it so well she can't poke holes in it. Emma, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Because nobody gets to use someone's pain as a weapon. Not even beautiful ex-fiancés in designer coats. Something shifted in Jackson's expression. Gratitude mixed with something deeper, more dangerous. The other guests arrive at breakfast, he said quietly. 6 business executives and their partners. They'll be watching us. Judging every interaction, and let's give them something to watch. Emma closed the distance between them again, rising on her toes to press a soft kiss to his mouth. Different from before, tender instead of desperate. We make this convincing, she whispered against his lips. We make them believe. Tell them we met 6 months ago. Tell them I pursued you relentlessly. Tell them you make me happy. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Tell them anything that makes them believe I'm capable of loving someone, are you? Emma asked before she could stop herself. Jackson held her gaze. I don't know anymore. Before Emma could respond, headlights swept across the windows. A car was approaching up the mountain road. Jackson's entire demeanor changed. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by the cold executive mask she recognized from the diner. They're here early, he said, voice flat, which means someone wants to catch us off guard. I thought you said tomorrow morning. I did. Someone changed the plan. Jackson moved toward the door, then paused. Emma, I need you to trust me. Whatever happens this weekend, whatever you see or hear, remember that things aren't always what they seem. The knock at the door echoed through the lodge. Jackson's jaw tightened. It means this weekend just became a lot more complicated than I expected. He opened the door, and Emma's blood ran cold at the woman standing there, beautiful, elegant, furious.
Hello.
Jackson, the woman said, her voice dripping with venom. Surprise. Jackson's face had gone completely white. Victoria, he breathed, what are you doing here? Victoria stepped into the lodge like she owned it, her designer coat dusting snow across the hardwood floor. Behind her, a man in an expensive suit followed. His hand possessively on her lower back, Emma stood frozen by the fireplace. Watching Jackson's carefully constructed walls shatter. I'm here for the retreat, Victoria said, her smile sharp as broken glass. Didn't Marcus tell you? My company merged with his firm last month. We're all one big happy family now. The man behind her extended his hand to Jackson. Marcus Chen. Looking forward to working together. Jackson's handshake was mechanical. His eyes never left Victoria's face. How convenient, Jackson said, voice ice. And how like you to show up unannounced. Victoria's gaze slid to Emma, assessing, dismissive. And who is this? Emma felt the judgment in that look. Cheap clothes. Wrong shoes. Clearly out of place, Jackson moved to Emma's side, his hand finding the small of her back. The touch sent electricity through her spine. This is Emma, my girlfriend. The word hung in the air, more intimate than any contract they had signed. Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. Girlfriend. How progressive of you, Jackson. I didn't think you had time for relationships, or emotions, or anything that wasn't a spreadsheet. People change, Jackson replied, his fingers spreading wider on Emma's back. Protective, possessive, do they? Victoria's laugh was bitter. I suppose we'll see this weekend. Marcus and I are staying in the West Wing. I hope that won't be a problem. Not at all, Jackson said through gritted teeth. Victoria leaned close as she passed, her voice dropping to a whisper Emma could barely hear. She's not your type, Jackson. Too real, too broken. This won't last. Then she was gone, Marcus trailing behind her, leaving destruction in her wake. The door closed. Silence pressed down like a physical weight. Jackson, Emma started. Don't. He pulled away from her, pacing to the windows. His shoulders were rigid, his breathing controlled but strained. Just don't. You told me your fiancée left you. You didn't mention she'd be here? I didn't know. Jackson's voice was raw. I had no idea about the merger. About any of this. Emma watched him struggle with emotions he clearly didn't know how to process. Part of her wanted to walk away, to leave this mess of rich people and their complicated games. But another part recognized the pain in his posture. She knew that kind of hurt. Had lived with it for years. What did she mean, I'm not your type? Jackson turned and Emma saw something dangerous in his eyes. She meant you're real. She meant you're not playing games or calculating angles. She meant you're exactly what she never was. I'm a waitress you hired for the weekend. You're more than that. Jackson crossed the space between them in 3 long strides. The moment you spilled that wine, the moment you looked at me like I was a person instead of a bank account, you became more than that. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. Jackson, this isn't real. We're not real. Then why does it feel more real than anything I've felt in 2 years? His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Emma should pull away. Should maintain the professional distance they had agreed to. Instead, she leaned into his touch. This is a bad idea, she whispered. The worst, Jackson agreed. Then he kissed her. Jackson's arms wrapped around her waist. And after the weekend, we go back to our separate lives. Like we agreed. But even as Emma said it, she knew it was a lie. Something had shifted between them. Something that couldn't be undone with contracts or distance. They stood there, wrapped in each other. As snow fell heavier outside the windows, "I should get some sleep," Emma finally said. "Not moving you should," Jackson agreed. "Not letting go." Jackson: "Yes. What did Victoria mean when she said I was too broken?" Jackson's expression darkened. "She's been investigating you. Your father's death. Your debts. The dropped master's program. She wanted ammunition." Emma felt cold spread through her chest. "How much does she know?" "Everything I know. Maybe more." Jackson's grip tightened on her. "I'm sorry. I never thought she'd go this far. Why would she investigate me?" "We only met yesterday." Jackson's silence was answer enough. He knew. Emma breathed, pulling back. "You knew she'd be here. That's why you needed me." "No, I suspected my business partners would push me about my personal life. I didn't know about Victoria until she walked through that door." Jackson's eyes pleaded for understanding. "But yes, I knew this weekend would be more complicated than I let on. I knew there would be pressure, scrutiny. Should have told me. Would you have come if I had?" Emma wanted to say yes. Wanted to claim she would have made the same choice with full information. But they both knew the truth. She would have run. "You lied to me," she said, hating how her voice shook. "I omitted details. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm standing, you're just like everyone else in your world, using people to get what you need." Jackson flinched like she had struck him. "You're right. I'm sorry. I should have been completely honest." "I'm going to bed," Emma said, turning toward the stairs. "Wait." She paused, but didn't turn around. "I know I don't deserve your trust," Jackson said quietly. "But I'm asking for it anyway. One weekend. Help me get through this weekend, and I'll double your payment. $20,000. Emma's hands clenched into fists. She should leave. Should walk out and never look back. But $20,000? And beneath the anger, beneath the betrayal, she still felt the ghost of his kiss on her lips. "Fine," she said, "but no more lies. No more omissions. If we're doing this, we do it honestly." "Agreed." Emma climbed the stairs without looking back. Feeling Jackson's gaze follow her until she disappeared into her room, she locked the door, leaned against it, and tried to calm her racing heart. Outside, the storm was picking up. Wind howled against the windows, snow swirling in the darkness. Emma moved to the balcony doors. Watching the mountains disappear into white, a soft knock made her jump. "Emma," Jackson's voice muffled by the door, "I know you're angry, but there's something else you need to know." She debated ignoring him. Debated letting him stand there in the hallway. Wondering if she'd even listen. Instead, she opened the door. Jackson stood there, his expression more vulnerable than she had ever seen it. "Victoria didn't just investigate you," he said. "She threatened you." Emma's blood ran cold. "What?" "She sent me a message tonight. Said if I don't withdraw from the merger deal, she'll destroy your life. Expose your debts publicly. Make sure you never work in this city again." "She can't do that." "She can. She has lawyers, resources, connections. She can make your life hell, Emma, and she will, unless I give her what she wants." Emma stared at him, mind racing. "So what are you saying?" Jackson's jaw tightened. "I'm saying you should leave. First thing in the morning. I'll pay you the full amount. I'll make sure Victoria never touches you. But you need to get out before this gets worse. And you. I'll handle it. I'll figure something out." Emma saw the lie in his eyes. He wouldn't figure it out. He'd surrender. Give Victoria everything she wanted to protect a waitress he barely knew. The sacrifice was there. Unspoken, but absolute. "No," Emma said. "Emma! You don't understand what she's capable of. I understand that she's using me to control you. And I understand that if I leave, she wins." Emma stepped closer, her voice steel. "I didn't survive 3 years of double shifts and crushing debt to let some rich woman intimidate me. We finish this weekend together. Come after you. Let her try." Jackson's expression shifted from concern to something else. Admiration, desire, desperation. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. He said probably both. Emma replied. They stood in the doorway, snow visible through the hallway windows, the lodge creaking under the weight of the storm. Thank you, Jackson whispered. Don't thank me yet. We still have to survive tomorrow. Emma started to close the door, but Jackson's hand caught it. That kiss, he said. It wasn't fake. It wasn't for show. I need you to know that. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. I know. Good night, Emma. Good night, Jackson. She closed the door, leaning against it, touching her fingers to her lips. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, a different kind of storm was building, and somewhere in the West Wing, Victoria was smiling, because everything was going exactly according to plan. But what Victoria didn't know was that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the world is to broken people who have finally found something worth fighting for. Morning arrived with brutal sunlight reflecting off fresh snow. Emma stood at her balcony, watching the other guests arrive in a convoy of expensive SUVs. 6 couples, all polished and perfect, their laughter carrying across the mountain air. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Victoria smile, felt Jackson's kiss, heard the promise of $20,000 that now felt like blood money. A soft knock preceded Jackson entering with a tray. Coffee, fresh pastries, fruit. I thought you might need fuel, he said, setting it on the small table. Emma turned, taking in his appearance. Dark slacks, charcoal sweater, hair still damp from the shower. He looked every inch the billionaire, except for the exhaustion bruising the skin beneath his eyes. You didn't sleep either, she observed. Hard to sleep when you're planning a war. Emma poured coffee, the steam rising between them. What's the battle plan? Jackson moved to stand beside her at the balcony railing. We present a united front, affectionate but not desperate, comfortable with each other, like we've been together 6 months. And Victoria? We ignore her. Don't engage. Don't react. Jackson's jaw tightened. She wants to provoke us, to make me lose control in front of my business partners. Will it work? Depends on how good an actress you are. Emma looked at him, at the vulnerability he was trying to hide behind strategy. I'm not acting anymore, Jackson. Whatever this is between us, it stopped being fake the moment you kissed me. Jackson's hand found hers on the railing, fingers intertwining. I know. The moment shattered as voices erupted from downstairs. The guests were gathering for breakfast. Ready? Jackson asked. No, but let's do this anyway. They descended the stairs together, Jackson's hand possessive on her lower back. The main floor had transformed into a social battlefield. Executives in designer casual wear, their partners dripping with jewelry and judgment. Victoria stood at the center, holding court, Marcus beside her like a trained attack dog. Jackson, one of the men called out, approaching with hand extended. Good to see you. And this must be the mysterious girlfriend we've heard nothing about. Jackson's smile was practiced perfection. Emma, this is Richard Blackwood. Richard Emma Sullivan. Charming, Richard said, his assessment clinical. How did you two meet? Emma felt every eye in the room turn to her. This was the test. The first of many. I spilled wine on him, she said simply. At a diner where I work, he asked me out before I could finish apologizing. Laughter rippled through the group. Genuine amusement, not mockery. Emma felt Jackson's hand tighten on her back. Pride? Maybe. Or relief? A waitress? Victoria's voice cut through the warmth. How refreshingly ordinary. I prefer authentic, Jackson replied, his tone pleasant but with steel underneath. Ordinary people don't play games or manipulate for sport. Victoria's smile never wavered, but her eyes promised violence. Breakfast was torture disguised as socializing. Emma sat beside Jackson, playing her role with increasing confidence. She laughed at appropriate moments, touched his hand across the table, let herself lean into his side when he told a story. And it wasn't acting. That was the terrifying part. So Emma, one of the wives, said, What are your plans? Career-wise, I mean. Surely you're not planning to serve tables forever. The question was poisoned, honey. Condescending concern. I dropped out of my master's program in literature, Emma said, meeting the woman's gaze steadily. Life happened. But I'm considering going back. Jackson's been encouraging me. Jackson's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently, supporting the lie that felt increasingly like truth. How noble, Victoria murmured. Jackson always did have a savior complex. And you always had a victim complex, Jackson replied smoothly. Some things never change. The table went silent, battle lines drawn. Marcus cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss the merger terms. That is why we're here, after all. The conversation shifted to business. Emma listened, trying to understand the corporate warfare disguised as polite negotiation. Victoria was pushing for control, using legal language and financial projections to back Jackson into a corner, and Jackson was losing. Emma could see it in the tightness around his eyes, the way his hand gripped his coffee cup too hard. He was being outmaneuvered, and everyone at the table knew it. I need some air, Emma said suddenly, standing. Jackson, join me. Outside, on the massive deck overlooking the valley, Emma grabbed Jackson's arm. She's destroying you in there, I know. Jackson's voice was hollow. The merger terms she's proposing would leave me with minimal control. My company would effectively become hers, so don't agree. If I don't, she'll come after you. She made that very clear in the message she sent this morning. Emma's blood ran cold. What message? Jackson pulled out his phone, showed her the text. Photos of Emma's apartment. Her waitressing schedule. Her father's grave. The message was simple. Agree to my terms, or I make her disappear. She can't actually do that, Emma said, but her voice shook. Or she can make your life hell. Destroy your credit. Plant evidence that gets you arrested. I've seen her do worse to people who crossed her. Jackson's hand cupped Emma's face. I won't let that happen to you, so you'll give her everything. Let her win. To keep you safe? Yes. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. This man, this stranger who had hired her for a weekend, was willing to sacrifice his empire to protect her? There has to be another way, she said. There isn't. Not one that doesn't put you in danger. Emma pulled away, pacing the deck. Snow crunched under her boots. Her mind raced, looking for angles, solutions, anything. Then she saw it. The security camera mounted under the eaves. Jackson, does this place have security footage? Of course. Why? Because Victoria made a mistake. She threatened me in writing. That's extortion. Emma's mind clicked into place, pieces falling together. If we can prove she's using illegal means to force the merger, we can destroy her credibility. Make her toxic to do business with. Jackson stared at her. You're brilliant. I'm desperate. There's a difference. They turned to go back inside to find the footage to build their case. Victoria stood in the doorway. Such a touching display, she said, voice dripping venom. But I'm afraid it's all for nothing. Marcus appeared behind her, holding a folder. We have our own evidence, Victoria continued. Evidence that Jackson has been embezzling from his own company, funneling money into offshore accounts, cooking the books to hide it. Emma's stomach dropped. That's impossible, is it? Victoria's smile was triumphant. Marcus has been working with Jackson's financial team for weeks. All the documentation is right here. Transaction records, false accounting, everything needed to prove criminal fraud. Jackson had gone pale. You framed me. I built a case, Victoria corrected. One that will hold up in court. Unless, of course, you sign over control of the company right now. Then these documents disappear. Everyone goes home happy. Everyone but Jackson, Emma said. That's collateral damage. He should have thought about that before breaking my heart. Emma looked at Jackson, saw the defeat settling over him like snow. He would sign. He would give Victoria everything to avoid prosecution, to protect his reputation, to keep Emma safe from the fallout. Wait, Emma heard herself say. Everyone turned to her. I have a better offer, Emma continued, her voice steady despite her hammering heart. Jackson signs over the company. You drop the fraud allegations, and I disappear from his life permanently. Emma, no, Jackson said, voice breaking. Those are my terms, Emma pushed on, not looking at him because if she did, she'd lose her nerve. You want him destroyed? You want to prove he can't maintain relationships? Let him sign the papers and watch the woman he supposedly loves walk away. Maximum damage. Maximum hurt. All without the messy legal complications. Victoria studied her, eyes calculating. Why would you do that? Because I'm not like you, Emma said quietly. I don't destroy people for revenge. I save them, even if it costs me everything. The silence stretched, painful and absolute. Deal, Victoria finally said. Marcus, get the papers. Jackson grabbed Emma's arm. Don't do this, please. You hired me to play a role, Emma said, finally meeting his eyes. Her heart shattered at what she saw there. I'm just finishing the performance. This isn't a performance. You know it isn't. Does it matter? Emma pulled away from him. You get to keep your freedom, your reputation, your life. All it costs is me. You're worth more than any company. No, Jackson. I'm worth exactly $10,000. We both know that. The words hit him like physical blows. Emma watched something die in his eyes and hated herself for killing it. But this was the only way. Victoria would never stop. Would never let them be. This sacrifice, this ending, was mercy disguised as cruelty. Marcus returned with documents. Jackson signed with shaking hands, each signature cutting Emma like a knife. Pleasure doing business, Victoria said, gathering the papers. Oh, and Emma? There's a car waiting to take you back to the city. Immediately, Emma nodded. She walked upstairs on numb legs, packed her small bag with mechanical precision when she came back down. Jackson stood at the window, his back to her. His shoulders shook with suppressed emotion.
Jackson, she started.
Don't, he said, voice raw. Just go, before I do something stupid like beg you to stay. Emma wanted to go to him. Wanted to tell him the truth, that she was falling for him. That this hurt worse than anything she had ever experienced. That walking away felt like tearing out her own heart. Instead, she walked out the door. The car waited. Engine running, exhaust ghosting in the cold air. Emma climbed in, finally letting the tears fall, through the rear window. She watched the lodge disappear behind the trees. Watched Jackson's life, Jackson's warmth. Jackson's possibility fade into nothing. The driver handed her an envelope. Inside a check for $20,000. And a note in Jackson's handwriting, "You saved me. Even though it destroyed us both. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget you." Emma clutched the note as the mountain road wound down toward the city, toward her cramped apartment in double shifts, in a life that now felt impossibly empty. She had survived. She had one. She had walked away with more money than she had ever seen. So why did it feel like she had lost everything that mattered? Back at the lodge, Jackson stood at the window, watching the car disappear. Victoria appeared beside him, victory written across her perfect features. "You'll get over her," she said. "You always do." Jackson turned to face her, and Victoria actually stepped back at what she saw in his eyes. "You took my company," Jackson said quietly. "You destroyed my reputation. You manipulated everyone around me. But you made one crucial mistake, Victoria." "What's that?" "You taught me that the only thing worse than being alone is being with someone who enjoys causing pain." Jackson's smile was cold. "Emma showed me what real sacrifice looks like, what actual love could be. And now, I know exactly what I've been settling for my entire life. She's gone, Jackson. She chose money over you. No, she chose my freedom over her happiness. There's a difference." Jackson walked away, leaving Victoria alone with her hollow victory and in the car, speeding away from the mountains. Emma made a decision. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Emma sat in her cramped apartment. Jackson's note spread on the coffee table beside the check. 3 days had passed since the mountain. 3 days of replaying every moment, every word, every touch. 3 days of planning. Sophie burst through the door without knocking, takeout in hand. "Okay, I've had enough of the brooding. You either tell me what happened, or I'm staging an intervention." Emma looked at her best friend. at the concern etched across familiar features, and felt something crack inside her chest. "I think I fell in love with him," she whispered. Sophie sat down, food forgotten. "The billionaire. Jackson. His name is Jackson." Emma's voice broke. "And I walked away to save him. And now I can't stop thinking that I made the biggest mistake of my life. So go back. I can't. His ex-fiancée threatened to destroy me. The only way to protect him was to leave." "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Sophie grabbed Emma's shoulders. "You don't save someone by breaking both your hearts. You fight together. You don't understand. Victoria has power, resources, lawyers, and you have something she doesn't." Sophie's eyes blazed. "You have nothing left to lose. You're already at rock bottom, Emma, which means you can't fall any further. But she's standing on top of everything she stole. That's a long way down." Emma stared at her friend, something igniting in her chest. Hope, rage, determination. "I need to know everything about Victoria Chen," Emma said. "Every business dealing. Every threat. Every skeleton in her designer closet." Sophie's grin was wicked. "Now you're talking. My cousin works in corporate investigation. Let me make a call." While Sophie disappeared into the bedroom, Emma pulled out her laptop. If Victoria wanted to play dirty, Emma would show her what real desperation looked like. She started with public records. Victoria's company merger. The suspicious timing. The board members who had suddenly changed allegiances. Then she found it. A pattern. 3 companies in 5 years. Victoria would date an executive, gain insider information, then orchestrate a hostile takeover disguised as a merger. Always using fraud allegations. Always threatening exposure. Jackson wasn't her first victim. He was her 4th. Emma's fingers flew across the keyboard, connecting threads, building a case. The other executives would have evidence too. Proof of Victoria's methods. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Emma Sullivan. A woman's voice, professional and cautious. "Yes. My name is Dr. Sarah Mitchell. I was engaged to Richard Blackwood 3 years ago. Victoria destroyed him too. A mutual friend said you might be gathering information about her methods." Emma's heart raced. "I am. Then we need to talk. Because you're not the only one who wants to take her down." 2 hours later, Emma sat in a coffee shop across from 3 people whose lives Victoria had demolished. Sarah Mitchell, whose fiancés had lost his company and reputation. David Park, who had been framed for embezzlement and spent 6 months in legal hell. And Marcus Chen's ex-wife, Jennifer, who had divorced him when Victoria had convinced him to destroy his own ethics for her benefit. "She has a pattern," Sarah said, spreading documents across the table. "She identifies powerful men with emotional vulnerabilities, gets close, learns their secrets, then weaponizes everything against them." "Why hasn't anyone stopped her?" Emma asked. "What?" "Because she's smart. She uses shell companies. Proxy investors. By the time anyone realizes what happened, she's already moved on to the next target." David's hands clenched around his coffee cup, and the men she destroys are too ashamed to admit they were manipulated. "Jackson isn't ashamed," Emma said quietly. "He's just trying to protect me, and stop letting him," Jennifer said bluntly. "Victoria thrives on isolation. She separates her victims from anyone who might help them fight back. If you and Jackson team up, if you bring in everyone she's hurt, she won't be able to divide and conquer anymore." Emma pulled out her phone, stared at Jackson's contact. Her finger hovered over the call button. "What if he doesn't want my help? What if he thinks I betrayed him?" "Then you remind him why you left," Sarah said. "And you show him there's another way?" Emma pressed call. It rang once, twice. On the 3rd ring, Jackson's voice. Rough with exhaustion, and something that might have been hope. "Emma." "I'm sorry I left," Emma said, the words tumbling out. "I'm sorry I made you think I chose money over you. I'm sorry I let her win." Silence. "Then where are you?" "In the city, with 3 other people Victoria destroyed." "Jackson, she's done this before. Multiple times. And I think I know how to stop her." "Emma, it's not safe." If she finds out you're investigating her, I don't care about safe anymore. I care about you, about us, about taking down a woman who profits from other people's pain. Emma's voice strengthened. But I can't do this alone. I need you, not your money or your resources. You, the man who cooks pasta and admits he's lonely. The man who kissed me like I was oxygen. She heard Jackson's breathing change, ragged, emotional. I'm on my way, he said. Stay where you are. Jackson arrived 30 minutes later, walking into the coffee shop like he owned it. His eyes found Emma immediately, and the look on his face made her breath catch. He crossed to her in 3 long strides, pulled her out of her chair, and kissed her in front of everyone. Not gentle, not hesitant. A kiss that said everything words couldn't. Don't ever leave me like that again, he said against her mouth. Don't ever let me, Emma replied. They broke apart, and Jackson finally noticed the others. Recognition dawned as he took in their faces. You're Richard Blackwood's ex-fiancée, he said to Sarah. And you worked at my company until 2 years ago, he said to David. Doria destroyed all of us, Sarah said. But together, we're going to destroy her right back. They spread the evidence across 2 tables, documents, emails, financial records showing a pattern of manipulation. And fraud spanning 5 years? This is enough to bury her, Jackson said, voice cold with anger. But we need something ironclad. Something she can't lawyer her way out of. She's meeting with your board tomorrow, Emma said. To finalize the company transfer. What if we record her? Get her to admit to the fraud on tape? She's too smart for that, David said. She never directly admits anything. Emma's mind raced. Then it clicked. Marcus, she said. He's the weak link. He loves her, but he's not a sociopath. If we can get him alone, make him understand what she's really doing, he might flip. It's a huge risk, Jennifer said quietly. Marcus isn't exactly stable when it comes to Victoria. I know, Emma replied, but it's our best shot. Jackson's hand found Emma's under the table. If we do this, we do it smart. No confrontations. No putting you in danger. It's too late for that. I'm already in danger. Emma squeezed his fingers, but this time, I'm not running. They spent the next 4 hours planning. Sarah would approach Marcus under the guise of discussing old business. David would gather the final pieces of financial documentation. Jennifer would reach out to board members Victoria had manipulated, planting seeds of doubt, and Emma and Jackson would be waiting. Recording equipment ready when Marcus finally broke as the others left. Emma and Jackson remained at the table. The coffee shop was closing, dim lights and scattered chairs around them. I can't lose you again, Jackson said quietly. These last 3 days have been hell. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything except the way you looked when you walked out that door. I know. I felt the same. Emma touched his face, memorizing every line. But this ends tomorrow. One way or another, and if it doesn't work, if Victoria wins, then we run. We take what we have, and we disappear. Build a life somewhere she can't touch us. Jackson pulled Emma close, breathing her in. I don't deserve you. You saved me long before I saved you. That dinner you cooked? The way you listened. The way you saw me as a person instead of a service worker. Emma's voice cracked. You reminded me I was human. That I was allowed to want things. To dream again. What do you dream about? Jackson whispered. You, us. A life that isn't about survival. Emma smiled through tears. Maybe finishing my master's degree. Maybe writing the books I used to imagine. Maybe just waking up next to you and not feeling afraid of what comes next. We'll have all of that, Jackson promised. After tomorrow, they left the coffee shop hand in hand, walking through city streets that felt different now. Alive with possibility instead of dread, Jackson drove her back to his penthouse, the one Emma hadn't seen yet. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. Art that probably cost millions. A space that screamed wealth and loneliness. Stay with me tonight, Jackson said. I need to know you're safe, Emma agreed, not because of fear, But because being apart from him felt physically painful, they stood at the windows, watching the city breathe below them. "What happens after we take her down?" Emma asked. "Do you get your company back?" "I don't care about the company anymore," Jackson said. "I care about this. About having something real in a world of transactions and manipulations. I'm still a waitress with crushing debt and a cramped apartment." Emma, the woman who spilled wine on a billionaire and changed his entire life. Jackson turned her to face him. The woman who sacrificed everything to save someone she barely knew. "The woman I'm completely in love with?" Emma's breath caught. "You love me?" "Completely, irrevocably. Since the moment you looked at me like I was human instead of a bank account." "I love you too," Emma whispered. "Even though it's insane, even though we've known each other less than a week, even though this should be impossible, the best things usually are." They kissed again, slower this time, savoring instead of desperate, a promise instead of goodbye. That night they lay in Jackson's massive bed, wrapped around each other, neither sleeping, just existing together in the quiet darkness. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Emma said, "I want you to know this was worth it. You were worth it." Jackson's arms tightened around her. "We're both going to be fine. We're going to win. And if we don't, then we lose together. And that's still better than winning alone." Morning came too fast. Jackson made coffee while Emma dressed in clothes they had picked up from her apartment. Simple, but professional. "Armor for the battle ahead," Sarah called at 9. Marcus agreed to meet. "He sounds nervous. I think he knows Victoria is using him." "Where?" Jackson asked. "His office, noon. He insisted on neutral ground." "We'll be there," Emma said. The drive across the city felt surreal. Emma kept expecting Victoria to appear, to somehow know what they were planning. But the streets remained normal. Traffic and pedestrians and the ordinary chaos of urban life. Marcus's office building stood downtown, glass and steel reaching toward gray skies. They took the elevator to the 15th floor, where Sarah waited outside a conference room. "He's inside," she said. "Alone? I told him we wanted to discuss Victoria's methods." He seemed almost relieved. Emma and Jackson entered to find Marcus standing at the window, shoulders slumped. He looked nothing like the confident man who had stood beside Victoria at the lodge. He looked destroyed. "I know why you're here," Marcus said without turning around. "You want to know if the fraud allegations were real. If I helped her frame Jackson, did you?" Jackson asked, voice carefully neutral. Marcus turned, and Emma saw tears on his face. "Yes, God help me, yes. I thought I loved her. Thought she loved me. But she's just using me like she's used everyone else." "Then help us stop her," Emma said gently. "Tell us everything." On record, Marcus looked between them, broken and desperate. "If I do this, I lose everything. My career, my reputation, possibly my freedom. If you don't, you lose your soul," Jackson said. "And trust me, that's worse." Marcus stared at them for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll tell you everything." As they set up recording equipment, Emma felt hope surge through her chest. They were going to win. They were going to take Victoria down. And then Emma's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A photo attached. Emma opened it, and the world tilted on its axis. The photo showed Sophie, bound to a chair in an empty warehouse, gagged, terrified. The accompanying message was simple. "Come alone to the address below, or your best friend dies. You have 1 hour." Emma's hands shook so badly, she almost dropped the phone. Jackson saw her expression. Grabbed the phone. His face went white. "She has Sophie," Emma breathed. "Victoria has my best friend." And just like that, everything changed. Emma stared at the photo, her world narrowing to Sophie's terrified eyes. Her best friend? The one person who had stood by her through everything. "I have to go," Emma said, already moving toward the door. Jackson caught her arm. "It's a trap. I don't care. That's Sophie. I can't let her die because of me. Victoria wants you isolated. Wants to separate us again." Jackson's grip tightened. We go together, or we don't go at all, she said alone. She's lying. She wants you vulnerable, scared, easy to manipulate. Jackson turned to Marcus. Tell me you have security contacts. People who can get to that warehouse fast. Marcus nodded, already pulling out his phone. I can have a team there in 20 minutes. We don't have 20 minutes, Emma said, her voice breaking. We have 1 hour, and it'll take 40 minutes just to drive there. Then we buy time. Sarah stepped forward, her expression fierce. Marcus, you call Victoria? Tell her you need to meet immediately. Tell her Emma found out about Sophie and is falling apart. Make her think her plan is working. That might give us 10 minutes, David said. Maybe 15? Then we make those 15 minutes count, Jackson replied. They split up. Marcus made the call, his voice perfectly calibrated between nervous and excited. Sarah and David headed to gather the documented evidence, insurance, in case everything went wrong. Jackson and Emma ran for his car. The drive was silent, tense. Emma's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Jackson drove with controlled aggression, weaving through traffic like his life depended on it, because maybe it did. She won't hurt Sophie, Jackson said, trying to convince himself as much as Emma. She needs leverage. The moment Sophie's injured, she loses her advantage. You don't know that. You don't know what Victoria's capable of. Yes, I do. I dated her for 3 years. She's calculating, manipulative, cruel. But she's not stupid. Kidnapping and murder are lines even she won't cross. Emma wanted to believe him, desperately wanted to believe that Sophie would be okay. They pulled up to the warehouse district with 10 minutes to spare. Abandoned buildings stretched in every direction, decay and broken windows, speaking of industrial dreams that had died decades ago. Emma's phone buzzed. New instructions. Building 7. Come alone. Leave your phone. I have to go in, Emma said. Not without me. Jackson, if she sees you. She might hurt Sophie out of spite. If she sees you alone, she'll destroy you both. Jackson's eyes blazed with determination. I'm not losing you. Not again. Not ever. Emma looked at the man she loved, at the stubborn set of his jaw, and made a decision. Then we do this smart. You stay out of sight. I go in first. If things go wrong, you call the police. Emma, promise me, Jackson. Promise me you won't do anything stupid. Pulled her close, kissed her hard. I promise I'll keep you alive. That's the only promise I can make. They approached Building 7 from different angles. Emma walked through the front entrance, heart hammering. The warehouse was cavernous and dark, lit only by dusty sunlight filtering through broken skylights. Sophie sat in the center, still bound, still gagged. Her eyes went wide when she saw Emma. Hello, Emma, Victoria's voice echoed from somewhere in the shadows. Thank you for being predictable. Emma moved towards Sophie, but Victoria stepped out, blocking her path. She looked immaculate as always, not a hair out of place despite orchestrating a kidnapping. Let her go, Emma said. This is between you and me, is it? Because it seems to be between me and Jackson. You're just collateral damage. Victoria circled Emma like a predator. Did he come with you? Is he lurking somewhere? Playing hero? I came alone. Liar. Victoria's smile was sharp, but it doesn't matter. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Jackson? Tell him if he doesn't sign over complete control of his remaining assets, I kill your friend. Then you, then him. In that order, you won't get away with this. Marcus is already talking to the authorities. He's giving them everything. Victoria's expression flickered, just for a moment, fear replacing confidence. Marcus is weak. Whatever he thinks he knows won't hold up. He knows about the other companies. The pattern. The fraud you've committed over 5 years. I came a step closer, finding courage she didn't know she possessed. You're done, Victoria. This is over. Nothing is over until I say it is. Victoria pulled out a gun. Emma's blood turned to ice. You said you weren't stupid. Murder crosses every line. Desperate times. Victoria's hand was steady. Make the call. Now. Emma's mind raced. She could call Jackson, lead him into the trap. Or she could refuse and watch Sophie die. Or she could make a different choice entirely. Okay, Emma said, slowly pulling out her phone. I'll call him. She pressed Jackson's contact. It rang once before connecting. Emma. His voice tense with worry. Jackson, I love you, Emma said clearly, and I'm sorry. Then she threw the phone at Victoria's face and ran. Not away. Toward Sophie, the gun went off. The sound deafening in the enclosed space. Emma felt something burn across her shoulder but kept moving. She reached Sophie, her fingers working frantically at the ropes. Victoria recovered, gun tracking Emma's movement. That was stupid. Probably, Emma agreed, finally freeing Sophie's hands. But I'm done running from bullies. Sophie ripped off her gag. Emma, your shoulder. I'm fine. Get out of here. Not without you. The warehouse doors burst open. Jackson entered like a storm, followed by police officers, Marcus, and what looked like a SWAT team. Victoria's gun wavered. She was cornered, trapped, her carefully constructed plans collapsing around her. Put the weapon down, one of the officers commanded. For a moment, Emma thought Victoria might actually shoot, might take everyone down with her in one final act of destruction. Instead, she lowered the gun, defeated, broken, as officers swarmed in to arrest her. Victoria's eyes found Emma's. You were supposed to be nothing, Victoria said, voice hollow. Just another pawn. How did you beat me? Emma, leaning heavily on Sophie as blood soaked through her sleeve, managed a weak smile. I found something worth fighting for. You've never had that. They arrested Victoria on charges of kidnapping, extortion, fraud, and attempted murder. Marcus's testimony, combined with the evidence Sarah and David had compiled, would ensure she spent decades in prison, but Emma barely registered any of it. Her vision was graying, the gunshot wound worse than she had thought. Jackson was there suddenly, catching her as her knees buckled. I've got you. Stay with me. Is Sophie okay? Emma asked, words slurring. She's fine. You saved her? Good. Emma's eyes fluttered closed. That's good. She woke in a hospital room 2 days later. Morning light streamed through windows and Jackson sat in a chair beside her bed. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Hey, Emma said, her voice rough. Jackson's head snapped up. Relief flooded his features. You're awake. Thank God you're awake. What happened? The bullet grazed your shoulder. You lost a lot of blood, but you're going to be fine. Jackson moved to sit on the edge of her bed, careful not to jostle her. Emma, you could have died. So could Sophie. No. And what you did was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever witnessed. Jackson's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. Don't ever scare me like that again. Can't promise that. I do a lot of stupid, brave things, apparently. He laughed, the sound broken but genuine. Victoria's going to prison for a long time. Marcus is cooperating fully. And your testimony, once you're recovered, will seal her fate. And your company? Being reinstated. The board realized they were manipulated. They're voting next week to restore my position. Jackson's thumb traced circles on her palm. But honestly, I don't care about any of that. I almost lost you. The company, the money, the power, none of it matters compared to that. Emma looked at the man she loved, at the vulnerability and strength existing simultaneously in his expression. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now you recover. Then you go back to school if you want. Or don't. Or do something completely different.
Access.
Leaned closer. And I spend every day making sure you know how extraordinary you are. How you changed my entire world in less than a week. That's a long-term plan. Are you sure you want to sign up for that? Emma Sullivan, I have been sure of exactly one thing since the moment you spilled wine on me. I'm sure about you, about us. About building a life that isn't about survival or transactions or fear. Emma felt tears slide down her cheeks. Happy tears. Healing tears. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. More than I thought I was capable of loving anything. They sat in the quiet hospital room, hands clasped, watching the morning sun paint the walls gold. Sophie burst in moments later, followed by Sarah, David, and Jennifer. They brought flowers, laughter, and stories of Victoria's very public breakdown during her arrest. "You're a hero," Sophie said, squeezing Emma's good hand. "You saved my life. You saved mine first. Years ago, by being the friend who never gave up on me." Over the next weeks, Emma healed. Physically from the gunshot wound, emotionally from years of exhaustion and hopelessness. Jackson was there through all of it. Not as a billionaire or a boss or a transaction. As a partner, on a crisp morning 3 months later, Emma stood in Jackson's kitchen, now their kitchen, cooking breakfast. She had moved into the penthouse after her apartment lease ended. They had discussed buying something new together, but Emma liked the view. Liked how the space felt less lonely now. Jackson emerged from the bedroom, hair messy from sleep, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. He looked nothing like the cold executive from the diner. He looked human, happy, real. "I got my acceptance letter," Emma said, pulling an envelope from the counter. "The university is letting me back into the master's program. Full scholarship." Jackson crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "I'm so proud of you. I never would have had the courage to reapply if you hadn't reminded me I was allowed to dream. You reminded me of the same thing." Jackson kissed her temple. "We saved each other, Emma. That's how this works." Later that day, they visited the mountain lodge, the one where everything had started and nearly ended. They walked the deck where Emma had made her first sacrifice, looking out over snow-covered peaks. "I want to bring people here," Emma said suddenly. "People like us, who are exhausted and breaking and need a place to remember they're human. Make it a retreat. A real one, where nobody has to perform or pretend." Jackson looked at her eyes bright with emotion. "That's perfect. We'll do it together. You sure you want to partner with a waitress on a crazy idealistic project?" "Emma, I'd partner with you on anything. Because you're not a waitress? You're the woman who taught me that strength isn't about power or control. It's about choosing to be vulnerable, choosing to love even when it's terrifying, choosing to fight for something bigger than yourself." Emma turned to face him fully. "That dinner you made me, that first night, you said loneliness was better than betrayal." "I was wrong," Jackson said quietly. "Connection is better than both, even when it's messy and complicated and scary, especially then." They stood together as snow began to fall, soft flakes catching in Emma's hair. The lodge glowed warm behind them. Their futures stretched ahead, uncertain but bright with possibility. Emma thought about the exhausted waitress she had been 6 months ago. The woman who had stopped believing in dreams or happiness or love. That woman felt like a stranger now. "What are you thinking?" Jackson asked. "That I spilled wine on a billionaire and it changed my entire life. The sound rich and free. Best accident that ever happened to me. To both of us." They kissed as snow fell around them, two broken people who had somehow become whole together. The mountain stood eternal and patient, witness to their transformation. Inside the lodge, warmth and light waited. Outside, the wilderness stretched wild and beautiful. And between those two worlds, Emma and Jackson had found their place. Not because they were perfect, not because the journey had been easy, but because they had chosen each other again and again. Through betrayal and sacrifice and pain and healing, they had chosen love. And in the end, that was the only choice that mattered. 6 months after that, Emma stood in front of Jackson's board of directors, presenting her plan for the mountain retreat. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't waver. She had learned her own strength. The board approved unanimously. A year later, the retreat opened. People came from everywhere, exhausted souls looking for peace. They found it in the mountains, in the silence, the reminder that being human was enough. Emma finished her master's degree. She wrote her thesis on contemporary narratives of transformation and survival. It won awards. Publishers called, but more importantly, she woke up every morning next to Jackson. And she didn't feel afraid anymore. They got married on the mountain deck, with Sophie as maid of honor and a handful of close friends as witnesses. Emma wore a simple dress. Jackson cried during his vows. It was perfect. Victoria watched from prison as her empire crumbled and her victims rebuilt their lives. She had taken so much from so many people. But in the end, she had given Emma and Jackson something unexpected: the courage to fight for what mattered. Years passed. The retreat thrived. Emma published books. Jackson learned to value relationships over transactions. They fought sometimes, made up always, built a life that was complicated and beautiful and real, and late at night. When Emma couldn't sleep, she would stand at the floor-to-ceiling windows of their penthouse, looking out at the glittering city, and remember the exhausted waitress who had spilled wine on a stranger. That moment had seemed like a disaster, like the universe conspiring against her. But it had been the beginning of everything. Jackson would find her there, wrap his arms around her from behind, and they would stand together in the darkness. Two people who had been lost and lonely and broken. Two people who had found their way home regrets. Jackson would ask, the question ritual now. Not a single one, Emma would answer. Always the same. Because the truth was, every choice had led her here. Every sacrifice. Every moment of pain or fear or doubt, all of it had been worth it for this. For them. For the life they had built from the ashes of who they used to be. The city lights stretched to the horizon, infinite and bright. The future waited. Unknown, but no longer frightening. And Emma finally understood what it meant to be free. Not freedom from struggle or pain, but freedom to choose. To love. To become, she turned in Jackson's arms, kissed him slowly, and smiled against his mouth. Take me to bed, she whispered. Always, he replied. They walked together into the darkness of their bedroom, into the warmth of their shared space. The windows glowed behind them, reflecting their silhouettes to people. One story. A love that had survived betrayal, sacrifice, and everything the world had thrown at them. A love that would endure. The end.